Aloha everyone, and welcome to another Tinker's Academy video. I'm your host Kay Elmer, and in this video it is the first of a series of videos that I plan on making to highlight the benefits of quantum healing. For this particular video, I'm going to be discussing quantum healing as it relates to children with autism. So what it comprises of is essentially an actual NIH level study conducted in India by a group of doctors on 42 different children within their practice where they treat autistic kids. So it's an actual study, and then the second thing I'd want to share with you is the testimonies, two testimonies that have come from members of our Telegram group who have autistic children in their families. So let's get started. The first thing, of course, is the Indian study. Essentially, last year, back at the end of 2021 and conducted in 2022, a group of doctors running an autistic clinic in India partnered with Leela Quantum Tech to put together a study, the first of its kind, to study the comparisons between functional medicine, which is your standard of care, and actual quantum energy or healing, energy medicine. And so they wanted to know, if there was any changes or anything that would, what would happen if they just said, okay, let's treat these children the normal way, then let's treat them with energy medicine, but in two different ways. And so that's what this study was all about. The title of the study is Quantum Frequency and Functional Medicine in Autism, an Evidence-Based New Approach. And the thing that I want to point out before we jump into the details is that how they measured changes in the children was using something called the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist, or ATEC Scoring. So just want to make sure that we level set on exactly what that is. If you go to autism.org, there's lots of information about this process, this ATEC scoring process that's used. Apparently, I'm not an expert, but it's very common and used in numerous clinics and universities and so forth as a way to measure a person's severity of conditions and symptoms from autism. So just wanted to share this with you. There'll be a link of this site if you want to learn more about the ATEC scoring. There's actually an ATEC form out here. You can actually, if you have a child or someone that you're working with, you can actually, they can take it right here on the website. So what this scoring process is measuring, and this is what I think is really important, is like, when you say, hey, there's been an improvement, what does that mean? So specifically, the ATEC scoring process has 4 different scales, and it has this whole questionnaire, and these are trained professional clinicians who are actually trained on how to observe and evaluate and then document the changes of these autistic children. So, it's not guesswork. These people know exactly how to observe and exactly what behaviors and how severe the behaviors are, and so they can scale them up, and so that these scores can be compared apples to apples, for children across the country or across the world, in terms of like what is your ATEC score, meaning what is the severity of your symptoms. So it's really important that this is done in a clinical setting. And by a group of doctors. So when they use the ATEC scoring system, what I want to point out is that what they're measuring is the severity of an individual's ability to speak, their speech, sociability, sensory and cognitive awareness, and also lastly their health and physical behavior, up to including the doctors actually measured things like digestive health, bowel movements, eye contact, the whole bit, right? And so that's what they measured in a very clinical setting. So just so that we're all on the same page, it's like what the ATEC scoring was all about. So at the end of, so basically, and then at the end of the day, this just to kind of let you know that the study revealed promising improvements throughout the treatment. So let me go ahead and get into the details. So the materials and methods of the study was simply that there were 42 children. The majority were male, 83.3%, with the mean age of 5.7 years that were enrolled in the study. The study now was over the course of 9 months, broken into 3-month increments. The first increment was where they just treated the 42 children with their standard of care functional medicine program. And then they measured the children using ATEC scoring before the study started, and then at the 3-month mark after they had been doing, where they've been treated with functional medicine. And then they switched. In the second 3 months, they started doing distance healing via quantum entanglement using Leela Quantum Tech infinity blocks, and that comprised of we had basically went to the Telegram community for Leela Quantum Tech, and we'd ask for volunteers. And these beautiful, warm-hearted people volunteered their time. And what they would do, the people who owned infinity blocks, was they were all given a picture of a child, and they would place the picture of the child in their infinity blocks for a few hours every day, and that lasted for 3 months. And so that's so that was their what we call distance healing. Now the third 3 months, they switched over now to actually using a quantum capsule similar to that Heal capsule that Leela Q offers. And it was a specialized capsule, though, because it had a very specific quantum frequency embedded in the capsule. And Leela had donated, and by the way, Leela donated all of the blocks and all of the the blocks to the clinic, and the capsules to the clinic. So they made one for each child, and then each child wore this capsule with a very like I said, like a Heal capsule, but and it had a frequency that was similar to the focus frequency for those of you who are familiar with it, but it was specialized a little bit different than that one. And then the children wore those capsules for 3 months. So then the ATEC scores were obtained at baseline, like I said, before it started, and then at the 3rd month mark, the 6th month mark, and the 9th month mark, respectively, so they could see what was the difference from when they started, and then what was the difference between each one of the different treatment protocols. The results were pretty amazing. Among the 42 children, the mean ATEC score at baseline was 97.71. Baseline is when they started, so before they'd been treated in any manner, their score was 97.71. Oh yeah, and one thing about the ATEC score: high is severe, and the lower the number, the better the person, basically is in terms of severity of issues. So the lower severity is lower numbers, numbers, higher severity in terms of symptoms and behavioral issues and so forth. So that they all started at 97.71, which is, as you can imagine, that's very high. And then as they treated the children, the scores dropped consecutively. So what happened was when they treated them with functional medicine, the score dropped to 86.51. So you could see somewhat of a decrease. But then when they went to the eye blocks with quantum entanglement and quantum healing, they dropped to 76.14. And then when they actually gave the children capsules, they dropped to 64.45 as their ATEC score. And so the overall numbers that when you look at what was the result. When using the eye block, the children showed a 22% improvement in scoring over baseline, and when they had their capsules, they showed a 34% improvement. And so this is quite remarkable. At the end of the day, this was a comparison between quantum healing and functional medicine, and these are the results. Now, the study has not been published yet. It's undergoing peer review, and it's to be published in 2023 in a medical journal in India. So this is just a brief summary of the information that we got from the doctors to kind of just share with us, what was the outcome of this study and how do they do it. So this is quite amazing, and definitely, very happy to share this with you. And I think it's quite promising in terms of how quantum healing can help these children. So now the next thing, let's talk about some testimonies. One of the things about it, I just want to point out is that this particular testimony came to me privately on a direct message from a grandmother who was just ecstatic, who at something that had happened that they had no expectation. And this is what's key: there was no expectation. They weren't even trying to do anything. And so let me read, and I apologize. I hate when people read to me, but let me go ahead and read you what she wrote to me on Telegram, and because it's so heartwarming. So anyway, my grandson is almost 4 and has autism. He basically had non-functional verbal skills. They have had an IB, which is an infinity block, at their house for 3 to 4 weeks, and he is speaking in sentences. His verbal skills have made major improvement literally overnight. This was this past Monday. Literally only change was an IB at her house, her daughter. He was at my house for 4.5 days with my infinity block, but part of the time I had it disassembled because I was upgrading. But once he got home, he told my daughter, "Cheese, I want orange cheese." And she was beyond thrilled. He went into school the other day and he said, "No cupcakes at school." That was his 2nd day of school, and it is beyond a miracle. We appreciate you and the staff. and you know what you've done. The kid will be 4 in December. Countless speech therapy, OT, PT, music therapy, etc. Nothing. And so we had a longer conversation, and essentially at the end of the day, this little 4-year-old with autism had not spoken ever until this moment. And now and then I got a most recent, she gave me a little video clip of him, and he's just chattering nonstop. And the only difference in anything in his life was being exposed to an infinity block. Pretty amazing. Now the next one here is sort of the how this all kind of started was a Telegram friend of mine had an autistic child, an adult son who had autism, was pretty severe, and we kind of decided, hey, let's see what would happen. And so I was sort of like, this was sort of the pilot study that the Indian doctors had heard about, and then that's how they ended up working with Philip at Leela Quantum Tech. So this pilot was conducted a year prior to the Indian study, where I was working with this friend of mine, and so we decided, let's just see what would happen. So a little backstory: his son is 27 years old. And if you read right here, I'm a father of a 27-year-old diagnosed with autism, and his current diagnostic is autistic catatonia with cognitive defects. So before I get into the rest of it, and again, I apologize for reading to you, but the backstory on this is that this child has been in treatment. He actually goes to adult care facility every day where they specialize with people with special needs. And they actually, I don't know if they use the ATEC. I never did ask him, but they use a scoring system. These clinicians at the clinic, and they score his child every single day for years and years and years and years. And one of the things that he said to me was that for years, he drops him off every day, picks him up after at the end of the day, and he said, basically they go over the scores with the clinicians and they try different treatments, and this guy, this child has been treated with almost everything you can imagine at this point. He's 27, but he always told me that his worst day, his child's worst day, his worst scores were on Mondays, right? Because he hadn't been near his treatments, for a couple of days over the weekend, but his worst days was Monday. And so we decided we'll pick Mondays. And so on Mondays, every Monday in the morning, I'd put his picture in my infinity block. And what happened was over the course of, I think we tried this for about 6 weeks to 2 months. What happened at the end of this period, he was telling me that his Monday scores were better than any other day of the week. And it was the first time in 27 years that he had good Mondays. Every Monday was consistently good, and his scores on Monday were really great compared to the rest of the week. And there was a complete 180 turnaround in how Mondays went for this guy. And just I was very happy to hear that. I was very happy to hear that. So let me just read you the rest of it. So again, he's 27. His child is 27. The adult son has autistic catatonia with cognitive defects. And so here's his testimony. During the pilot that I ran with this gentleman, he says, the turnaround was remarkable, as even minor improvements are a huge deal. We've seen a huge improvement in the 2 weeks since K started. That's me. My son's baseline at the time was some explosive rage, very low cooperation rates, and refusing to go visit his mom 3+ weeks, and it was worse than this. He told me, during the pandemic, it was horrible. All these people with mental, challenges it just got, the pandemic made it so much worse, right, because of lockdown. But anyway, there has been no change to his medicine over that time. So that's really key. Again, just like with the 42 kids, just like with the grandson, there's no other change. So and that's what's critical, is that you can attribute any changes to the one thing that changed, right, which is the introduction of quantum healing. So then he says, the change has been in a consistently positive direction. He showed a new resilience to pressure to see his mom, and a new tolerance for discipline, for pinching and punching, losing his phone. If he didn't respond, we were running out of options fast. 4 days after K started, he was out of the house, huge, because he hadn't left the house for months, and he was visiting his mom, very huge, and going to a farm where he fed animals. which is mind-blowing because it doesn't begin to describe it in terms of socializing. And then he went on to say he was initially resistant to some sound therapy that was donated to him, but that resistance has melted away, and we are now getting a combined effect. Hearing him laugh and say sure to requests for hugs is a million miles away from where we are or were. This isn't minor for his diagnosis and trajectory. In the last few days, as a result of a generous loan, we've been given access to some of Leela Quantum Tech's. We are nearing 24 hours with a block near him. So he's gone from quantum healing at a distance to now he actually has a block and in his home with his son. And then basically he goes on to say, and he continues to get better now with a physical block in his home. And with autism, the direction of behavioral changes are what is important. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but the results so far have been nothing less than a stunning answer to tear-filled prayers. And so this testimony actually is on the public Telegram community. You can go ahead and actually search for it. You can find it in the chat. And so I just wanted to highlight these two things, the testimonies and the study, to kind of just give you an idea of what's possible, and hopefully we can help. As a community, we can help these children using our tools. So if you have an eye block, or you can have you can make a capsule, and someone who needs some help, why not? That's kind of what I want to kind of encourage everybody to kind of just take this for what it represents, which means that there is a very good probability that you might be able to help them, and I think that's wonderful, and that's what all of this is all about, right? It's helping each other. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your time. Now, if you want to learn more about quantum energy, you can visit Leela Quantum Tech and or myself at the Tinkers Academy on my blog. Links below in the video description. And again, thank you so much for spending the time with me. And you know what? If you know anyone with autism, again, I just wanted to just really encourage you. If you have Leela Quantum tools, just consider it, and I would just appreciate that. So thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful day. Aloha.